Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, Sixers, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 92, and today is September 13th, 2021. I'm Bill, and I'm joined, as always, by my sticky-fingered co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
These fingers are clean. They're not sticky.
But because Larson, he's a
I know.
stealer. It's sticky.
I'm just good at
Before we
ruining
get
your
started, we
puns.
do want to remind you that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. Now, normally that would mean if there's something in the Cosmere you haven't read and you're worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those first, then come back and join the discussion. Although, as we continue forward in this ongoing discussion we've been having, it's a little bit different. Because tonight, we are discussing the conclusion of Brandon Sanderson's original The Reckoners trilogy, which isn't the final book in the series just yet, but the third book in the trilogy, Calamity. To hear our discussions on Steelheart and Firefight, check out our previous episodes titled This Does Not Spark Joy and Gnocchi Incident, respectively. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you that it's possible for listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InnkeepersTable. We record episodes of the podcast every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us and actively take part in the discussion. Throw out your ideas, your theories, your jokes, your memes, whatever. Join the chat and make us laugh, make us smile.
Especially if they're prequel memes.
Doesn't have to be prequel memes.
But
They're extra fun.
If you insist. The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Even pledging $1 or $2 per episode is really helpful to us as we continue to work to improve the show. Patrons get immediate access to our Discord channel, where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere with other listeners. It's also a great community with a lot of great discussions. You also get early access to bonus episodes, exclusive access to other bonus content, and other good stuff. Guys, things just got heavy at the end. Like, the last book did not end in a happy place.
Mm-mm.
So, how do we feel? How did the end of the last book make you feel? Let's start the sixth group therapy session right now.
It's a gut punch. It's not a fun place to be. I'm really glad that I was like, I have Calamity. I can just read it, and it's right there. It's fine.
Oh, I remember finishing Firefight and being like, wait. Hold on. Wait a minute. Because not only did Prof go off the deep end, he murdered a couple of people.
Yeah.
A couple of people that we know, and we know that he cares about.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just sort of let's emphasize Prof is not Prof anymore. And like we said,
he's the very conveniently named Limelight.
Yep.
Okay, can we just talk about that for a minute? Because when you're reading through Steelheart, and David just happens to throw out Limelight as a random name, and it's just like, and it just happens to apply perfectly to Prof's power set.
Look,
it's green.
Prof is a Green Lantern with healing powers. Nobody knew this, and David just happens to throw out the name Limelight. It's just, this is one thing. It's just sort of, I would like to hang a little lantern on this. I would have liked Prof to be something like, we're not seeking the limelight or something like that. So we could at least be like, that's just the word that came to mind.
Exactly. That would work. But it's just like.
It's like, would it have just been bad if he's been like, this is things are going to change. Rocky Road is coming to town, and then Prof has to adopt the name Rocky Road, And everyone's like, is it because the
No.
tensors? And Prof would have to sit there. Yes, it's because of the tensors.
Now,
Gosh
to be
dang
fair,
it, David.
Jordan, to be fair, Jordan, you and I have had a couple of conversations where it's just like, okay, I don't think the name necessarily matches.
No.
For example, in this book, we have a new epic who shows up, Loophole.
Yes, if look to the left, I give my opinion on the name Loophole.
I can't see it to the left. So
I don't like it. It bugs me. You have shrieking powers. It's like, oh no, it's because she can fit into a loophole, and it's like, no, you've made it have to work on too many levels. Just get to the point. As someone who loves comic books, some of these villains have no quality control on their naming conventions.
listen,
Well,
they can't be as clear and concise as Death Point.
There was a comment I remember that he was talking about one random little epic who ended up dying partway through the book, and he's like, yeah, and that one changed their name like 4 times, and it got worse every time.
Yeah.
So they do change their names, it sounds like, if they try. But
Which, that's not the only time that's happened, but it's just some of them I'm just sitting here, you can do better. Just, just workshop it a little bit.
And then, of course, there's Instabam.
Don't get me
Who
started.
is Jordan's favorite.
You can't claim someone's a high epic that uses potato powers and then say, we fought and killed them off screen, Brandon. You can't do that. That
this
is
way you're
just
going to do it in your imagination, and it can be as epic as you want.
No, I don't want that. I want the actual thing.
That one came from the Alcatraz humor part of Brandon's brain, I think, where things are just a little bit goofy.
And I do wonder, I remember he said in like the credits that like his kids helped him, like workshops and stuff.
Really?
I think it said that like his kids were like, no, superheroes need to work this way or that way or kind of type thing. And I think, so I'm guessing some of them probably could have been named by his kids. I don't know. If anybody's seen a word of Brandon, then that would be cool. But I'm guessing from what I remember glimpsing in like his little like, thank yous and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Okay, so anyway, let's get back to the very ending / the very beginning of the last book and this book, respectively.
The super low point.
Yeah, so Val and Excel are now dead at Limelight's hands. Mm-hmm. T is missing in action and presumed dead. Spoiler, she's not.
She's not. We find that out partway through.
She is.
Yet.
Oh.
We'll have words about what happened there, actually.
Yeah.
Cody and Abraham, they're back with the family again.
Yay.
So yay. Because I missed me some Southern Scotsmen.
It was fun.
I missed...
and some Gentle Giant.
Yeah, I feel Abraham was what was really missing in the previous book.
I miss both of them. I really love both of those characters. I think they're great characters.
They play off each other and everybody else really well. Like, it's just the camaraderie and everything is fun.
Yep. And then Mizzy is now part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's kind of interesting because Prof's gone, T is gone. Nobody wants to step into the leader role, and so David's just sort of like, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah. And he does end up having a conversation with Abraham. Like, he's like, why don't you? And you find out, like, a hint that Abraham had horrible things in his past and is not considering himself for leadership positions at all.
Yeah. Well, and then Cody just sort of laughs it off. He's like, nope.
No.
Well, it makes a lot of sense in especially how Reckoner Crew works, where they each sort of have their individual roles. And it's not that Abraham doesn't show good leadership, but Abraham is more of a one-on-one person who can take the lead. And he's more of a, I guess I would say, like a counselor style, I'd say.
Well, and David and Prof have had discussions about how they're point men. And, and they're very, very similar. And so when that vacuum is there, it makes sense for somebody of David's personality and
to fill it,
skills to fill into that.
Well, and especially with what they're missing, being the fact they're missing both Prof and Tia, and David is sort of the nice middle ground between the two.
Yeah, because he had to impress both of them. Now, Megan's the one he had to convince, but at this point, Megan's happy to go along with them. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at the new epics we get in this book. So, Limelight, we've known Prof for a while, but Limelight is not Prof. It's Prof's body. It's Prof's memories. It's not Prof.
There's still
He's a
hints
different
of
person.
him. Like,
Yes.
there's still glimpses, but it's mostly not him anymore.
Because, Prof, who is their leader, who knows how they work, he created all of their protocols. This is the guy who built not just their team of the Reckoners, but all of the Reckoners.
So he goes around and he, like, wipes out a bunch of the other ones, too.
Yeah.
So, like, there's hardly any left.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. The first thing you take out are going to be the people who could take you out.
Who know you, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's made his way to one of the weirdest concepts I think Brandon's really come up with.
Yeah, it was trippy trying to picture it in my head.
Because
What,
he
the
goes
Salt
to Atlanta.
Slug City?
Yeah. He goes to Atlanta, which is clearly near Kansas City. Or Oklahoma City.
No, it was Kansas City.
It's in the Midwest.
Kansas City.
Okay, it is Kansas City. It's in the Midwest. And it's been turned to salt, and it just gradually grows and decays. And
It's just always moving.
Like, it doesn't actively move. There's no dragging. It's not a glacier. It's just sort of fading in and out of existence.
Okay, and I swear, because I was looking for this, did they say who originally did this? Because I know they say Larsonar has that power, but that doesn't mean anything.
Right, because he could have easily taken... I don't remember them saying who did it.
Because they say
Yeah,
there's
just
a
that it's
steering
there.
wheel that can guide it, and I'm just like, how? Why? Who?
Did
Yeah,
I miss that? I must
there
have
is.
missed
Yeah, they
that.
mentioned there's a steering wheel, and it's in the building that
Like
they
it's
have
the
to
world's
go into
largest
getting into,
houseboat.
The Sharp Tower.
Yeah, I think it's in there, or near it
Okay.
at least.
What's the name of the epic who controls the weather, makes it rain?
Stormwind.
Stormwind.
Is it Stormwind?
Is Stormwind? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Stormwind.
Yeah, Alliance.
Yeah.
A nice,
So it's-
straightforward name.
Yeah. So it's always interesting just sort of looking what new epics crop up in each thing and what
Wow, good pun
kind
there.
of come up with. What?
Prop up. Good
Which
pun.
didn't crop up.
I'm still not.
Anyway,
Because she made the crops grow.
Oh, right. Anyway.
Thought you had an
Okay,
English
so-
degree.
So yeah, we've got Stormwind. We've got Loophole, who her ability, she can shrink and she can
She's
make
like-
other people shrink.
she's
right?
like Ant-Man, kind of.
Except
without
Can she
tech.
grow though?
no, she can't grow. She can
She
make.
can't grow.
But she can make.
I thought she made somebody 20 feet tall.
Did she?
No, she made
or
David
was that-
shrink.
Oh,
and
that's
so
what
she
it was.
Seemed
She seems small. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
But the
Got
difference
that
is Ant-Man can shrink himself. He can't shrink other things.
They have the discs. So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
in Ant-Man it's all tech. So he has discs that he can use to shrink or grow things. So
Right.
but she does it with just her powers.
Yeah,
by
well,
touching.
and I love the fact that David thinks like, okay, she shouldn't be too big an issue, and then bullets shrink as they make contact
Yes.
with her, and it's just he's suddenly like,
you might be in high epic.
oh, this is
like, oh,
this could
man.
be a bigger issue than I thought. No, it's a smaller issue than you thought, David.
her
Dang it.
death is just oof. Her death is gruesome though.
Like I thought,
shame on
I thought the worst death was going to be Val's, the basketball. But when, like, as soon as I heard she starts, like, it's just like, this will not end
no.
well. This will not end
Chunky
well.
salsa.
Yep. There's a lot of chunky salsa in this series. A lot more than I anticipate. It definitely highlights when people ask Brandon, like, what do you determine to be YA? And it's like, because it's clearly not violence.
Right.
And he's like, it's sort of just perspectives, if I put
Yeah,
it.
that
and
that's
I mean
sort of
he
the main
keeps
thing,
the
is just
romance very clean. It's a lot of fade to black if there's anything that way too.
Well, as if it's ever been really dirty in
Oh,
any of his books.
No, but I mean it's like he keeps to that as well. Like that seems to be another thing that.
Yeah.
But that's not the case with normal YA. That's gotten less so.
Yeah, he says it's for him. It's more about the number of viewpoint characters. For YA, he just keeps it to one, and
number of viewpoint characters and the
Their age.
the age.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Also, with the exception of the Arithmetist, all of Brandon's YA stuff has been first person.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It
So,
makes it a little interesting because that's outside of how he normally does things.
Mm-hmm.
And the struggle for first person is, if you don't like the character, the book ain't going to work.
You're stuck in there.
Oh, yeah. You got to...
But the other thing about first person is it just as the way it works, it limits it to a single perspective. Like you were saying.
So you can't get other things that are happening unless that person knows about it.
It does a good job of allowing the unreliable narrator there, though. It lets you do some things. It's another one of those things, different brushes can do different things for a painter. Different perspectives can do different things for a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Obliteration, of course, is still at large.
It's still creepy.
So I love obliteration.
Dude, obliteration is messed up.
He is my kind of villain.
I'd forgotten his end reveal too. I was like, what? I forgot about that.
Well, because at the very end, when he's just like, oh no, he faced his fears long before.
5
He's just
years
messed
ago,
up.
he's like, yeah, I got that, and it's just like, oh, you're just scary.
Crazy people got powers too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No, he started it at Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and then got godlike powers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Larsener. So Larsener is such an
so
interesting...
Larsener's the worst. I can't... He is the exact person I hate. A teenager.
He's absolutely obnoxious.
And I'd forgotten the little twist at the end, and that explains to me part of why Larsener is so whiny.
We're at full spoiler point. You can...
Okay, so anyway, at the end you find out that he's an alien or something. It still isn't 100% make sense to me, but
they don't tell us.
It's an unknown, human bodies and human experience and everything is really weird to him. And so he's only 10, maybe 20, and he's still going off of a very different starting point than a human, and so everything that's natural to us is not natural to him. And so he's just I hate having to do these normal things or hear sounds or whatever else and not do exactly what I want, which makes me think of a toddler, kind of, that he's just not moved past that.
Mm-hmm.
And he projects it onto all of humanity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing. The way I've described the epic feelings is everybody is just really, really hangry.
That is a good way to put it.
Because that's just what it feels
They're
like. It's
hangry.
just they are so mad and so just everything's awful and horrible, and how dare you inconvenience me, and it's just that this is the worst case of being hangry I've ever...
Yeah. Well,
yeah, and Megan describes it that way too a little bit, that she's you ever been irritated? And she's it's just on 10,000.
Well, and she says this, she says it's like when you're a child. When you're, because everything's about yourself as a child, because you have no sense of perspective. And we now see that it's Larsener. He's the reason, because everything is about him. And you contradict him at all. He's like, nuh-uh, nuh-uh, uh-uh,
I'm not doing it. Yeah.
Just just
and
someone
he
murder him,
please. Yeah, he's got these recursive arguments, and just where if you disagree with him, it's because you're irrational.
Yeah.
It's just well, no, you're just wrong, okay?
I couldn't stand him. I wanted Prof to capture him so bad the entire time. I would have totally just gone to Prof's side. If I were David, I just would have gotten a road flare and just been like, dude, he's here.
Take him here. Take him away.
Dude, end him, please. My goodness, whatever the plot is, I'm all in.
Now, in the same vein, what did y'all think of Nighthawk?
I love Nighthawk.
So Nighthawk,
I'd always forgotten that he was that weird. I'd forgotten again.
Nighthawk is sort of because he's got the same sort of self-absorbedness as Larsener. He's just less obnoxious about it.
Well, it's also he's a little more. His self-absorbedness is also a little more put on. It's a bit of an affect that he does, because he doesn't
a bit.
Because he wants to believe in more stuff, but we saw what he went through, and so he sort of gave up hope. But that's what David's good at, is getting people to hope again.
Yeah, but then like I'm thinking more along the lines of just the random texting that he does with David. He's like, I'm bored.
Well, I mean, he's all by himself, and all he has to watch is these people's inane conversations on their phones. He doesn't have the normal internet like we do. He can't even move his body anymore. He has to have the mannequin thing do it.
Manny, the mannequin.
Manny, yeah. Was it Manny? That's right.
Yeah, Manny the mannequin.
Manny the mannequin.
His wooden soul.
I did like
he
him.
Changed his name to Nighthawk too.
Yeah,
it was not his normal name.
Yeah, I thought his voice, like the voice that what's his name? McLeod Andrews. The voice that he uses for Nighthawk is very, very interesting.
I like it.
See, I didn't do the audiobook, so I didn't hear it.
I've got to just say, I've said this before, McLeod Andrews is a phenomenal narrator for these books. He's one of the best ones that I've heard because he's able to get really, really good accents and give different voices, even with similar accents, to each of the different characters. Mm. The one exception, I get a little frustrated with his accent for Mizzy because you can tell he's sometimes trying to go for the Brooklyn accent, which is where she's from, and ends up going Southern.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, part of me wonders if this is because her name's Missouri and he just assumes
there's a little
Missouri
bit of
Southern. But I'm just like, no.
I think he just loses
She's
it. Like
Brooklyn.
whenever I try to do a Scottish or an Irish accent, if I do it long enough, it will become Scottish at some point.
See, I have the other thing. Like my when I try and do Scottish for Queen Eleanor, it turns Irish, and I'm like, oh no, I know this is wrong, but I can't fix it. So it's I have not tried it It's hard. It's like if you can't get the accent just right and get it to stick. It's painful.
Mm-hmm. It's a matter of sort of how you hold your mouth, but anyway.
I'm glad you noticed that as well. That I did notice that with Missouri, where she was just suddenly. It's like no, you went from Bronx to the drawl. It just popped in.
Which as a Southerner, it actually does frustrate me because he does Southern accents very, very well.
That's the problem. He does them well enough. He does a
decent job with Cody, and actually, if you listen to Lux, there's another Southerner who has does an amazing voice for her. I'm talking about Zeph.
Yeah,
I still have to listen to that. I'm gonna have to
yes,
buy
you do,
tomorrow.
and that's what we're talking about in 2
Yeah,
weeks.
I know. I'm gonna have to buy it tomorrow so I can listen to it.
It's good stuff.
But yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about McLeod Andrews' narration because he does a phenomenal job.
But back to Nighthawk. So I love the concept of Nighthawk. I've always one of the biggest things that when people try and do representation in books, sometimes they can get it really good, sometimes they can get it really bad. And one of the ones that I see people tend to struggle with are people with some form of a disability of some kind, especially physical ones. Because one, it's really hard to get in the head of someone who's disabled because it's so outside of our day-to-day thing. Like we can imagine, someone profiling us because of a skin color or something like that, because we can at least imagine that. It's hard to imagine, how do I live if I can't move all four of my limbs? And this is where Brandon really shows off, here's this guy who's sort of a Stephen Hawking type where he's brilliant, but he has this physical ailment that's holding him back. But he lives in a world with these superpowers. He makes these motivators, and he's come up with this brilliant way to cover for himself, and even using it to emote for himself to handle the physical gestures that come with the conversation, which is hilarious because it straddles this line between clever, funny, and creepy all at once.
Well, and it's interesting because, like you said, with the emoting, suddenly this guy who has no control of his body suddenly has the ability to communicate with body language again.
Yeah.
And you really just... It's amazing how much body language can tell you. I mean, just try having a conversation over the internet, and you'll see that it's just really easy to misconstrue if you're just communicating with words. Inflection adds a lot, but body language is a lot as well. And so the fact that he's able to incorporate a new angle of body language again is fascinating.
Well, and I like him being impressed with David, like, oh, it's the wooden soul. And he's like, she was from a remote Punjabi village. How? How do you know this?
How did you know this?
Yep.
But
so I think that's part of why he chooses David to have conversations with too. He's like, you know things that I know, and I want to have geeky conversations.
Well, and I like him warning David to, it's like, you better be careful with this. It can lead you to some weird places. He's like, you literally make weapons out of the corpses of epics. As I said, it can lead you to weird places.
Weird places. Yeah.
It's like,
He speaks from experience.
But man, his story, it's as far as like, he's sort of the reverse Mr. Freeze, where he has the villain the villain wife frozen in.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
And that's why he wants the Prof DNA, so he can get his healing to try and heal her up. And it's like, once you know his backstory, it's actually this thing that was at first sort of kind of like cool, but also a little annoying. You're just like, oh. And you see that little group that they originally formed, and like, especially when he finds out Tia died, like, he's just sort of, you can tell there's this moment of, I'm the last one, because Prof is gone.
And Prof the monster,
Regalia's gone.
Yeah, Regalia's gone. Yeah. Mirkwood's gone. My wife's gone. It's just me and Prof's mentally gone. I am the last one.
Yeah. No, it's a horrifying situation. I was just thinking. The other thing that's interesting is you hear about the Nighthawk Foundry in the first two, and they're this completely... It's this very cloaked in mystery organization. And suddenly, when they get to the Foundry, when they actually infiltrate it, it's completely different than you expected.
What, you didn't expect a castle?
I didn't expect him to be friends with Prof.
I didn't expect that. I'd kind of forgotten. I was like, oh yeah, he is.
Well, because the way it's discussed, it's like this other. It's this neutral faction that's unrelated. And it ends up, it's just one guy.
Yep. I kept thinking, like, I remember hearing, oh, it's got to be this big production and everything, but it's just Nighthawk himself.
And automation. It's just this brilliant guy who's set up a factory.
You ever meet that guy who just went too hard on automating tasks in Minecraft? That's this guy, but in real life.
But yeah. Okay, so Prof has come to Ildithia after reading through Regalia's plans and stuff, and he's basically taking over the city. He subdues Stormwind, and he starts looking for Larsener, who's the leader of the city. So he's just like, hey, what's the story? When you first get to prison, you punch the biggest guy there, and so he's just like, I'm taking down the head guy so that I'll be the head guy. And Larsener, who has all these amazing abilities that he's stolen from everyone, shows up on the Reckoner's hideout doorstep and is just like, hide me.
And don't make too much noise or anything. Like, he's grumpy about everything.
But hide me. Oh, he's a brat.
When I love them all, they're all pointing guns at him, even though all of them know it won't do anything.
And he even points it out, and they're like, they still don't take their guns off, and they're like, we just can't do it. It's not comfortable.
And then they all sort of just move to the other room, and they're like, so this is happening. Anyone got ideas as to why this is happening?
Oh, and
they're still sort of like, I don't know.
Well, it's just because it's completely out of the blue. Brandon took it in a very interesting direction where I was just like, what's this guy doing here? Why is he here?
He's hiding.
Well, and
I kind of think he was there to study David too a little bit, because David refused, and so he's like, why wouldn't you take it up? And so that's kind of the feeling that I got, even though Larsener never, I don't think he ever straight up says that that's why he's there.
Well, and then also Megan's there who's actively fighting against it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but he just always seems too self-absorbed. Like, I don't think he even noticed, really, until he tried to take her powers after she offered it. And then had real quick buyer's remorse on that one. Or I guess seller's remorse. But... And then, no, it's mine. And it's just like, oh, okay. And then
never
promptly...
mind.
Okay, I want to talk about this.
Okay.
This book feels too short to me. It feels like the halfway point should have been the hit on the... Where they try and rescue Tia from Sharp Tower. And that's and it's instead it's like 2/3 of the way through. It feels to me like this all should, like everything in Ildithia should have been one book... And they like with it ending with freeing Prof, and then the actual stuff with Calamity should have been its own book. Like, it just feels
so like this book should have been named Limelight. There should have been a fourth book named Calamity. Yeah, no, I completely agree.
I just worry that it would get way more philosophical. Oh my goodness.
Waffle.
I was like, that. There's a word, I cannot say it. That, you know, than the rest of the are, because I mean, there's a little bit of philosophy going on, but it's not philosophy heavy. And I think that if it had been a Calamity, had been just dealing with Calamity, that it would have turned into a superhero philosophy book, which doesn't fit as well within my mind.
I don't know that it would have naturally done that. I feel like you could have still had the, most of the time Calamity's not there, but there just had to be other stuff, and it deserved its own book.
Yeah, and so my imagining for this thing that I propose as I try and retcon what actually happened in the past would be the next book would be them trying to figure out how to take down Calamity himself. And it would instead be a story of David dealing with his now his high epic team that he has of himself, Megan, Prof, who's going through horrible regrets. And I would imagine
Missy apparently has powers too. We don't know what they are, though.
Well, but that was
Yeah.
after.
That's after.
And then they would have obliteration as part of their team, and having to deal with that insanity. And that's sort of like the book I imagine of them plotting, as an actual high epic team. Because that's something I liked about this is when David when they were infiltrating Sharp Tower and he's listening to Prof talk and he realizes Prof is still Prof and he's formed another team and he's planning things out and he's going to make a hit. And
yeah, I probably would have taken Larsener and put him into the fourth book. So like he wouldn't have shown up in Ildithia at all. He would have shown up in book 4. Or maybe he would be mentioned at some point in book 3. And so basically have a different boss epic that's in charge of Ildithia.
Yeah, it's just because there's always the Sanderlanche that happens in every single book. This one doesn't feel like a Sanderlanche to me. It feels like a stepwise function where it's just like we're here and suddenly we're over there. We just dealt with Prof in this battle that's been crescendoing, and then Larsener just shows up, takes his powers, gone, and then suddenly Obliteration's here. It's like, hi, are you here for the end credits? I'm here for the end credits. Let's go to the end credits.
Have you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever like set up a ramp and roll something down it and just picture it launching off the end of it, but then it just sort of gets to the end and just goes whoop and just pops off the end and falls to the ground. Yeah. Like you put a Hot Wheels car or just a ball
or marbles
something,
or whatever.
And instead of it launching into space like a ski jump that you would imagine, it just sort of hops a little bit and falls. That's kind of how this felt. You've got the avalanche just coming down. And then there's a ramp at the end, which is let's go confront Calamity. And it just sort of whoop.
This is the problem of setting up godlike entities to take on in the superhero genre specifically. Because we've seen Brandon have people take on godlike entities before. They fought the Lord Ruler, but because of the trappings of fantasy, there's rules to his godhood that they're able to exploit. but that's not how it is here. And instead, it's you have to trick the devil into defeating himself, essentially. Although in this case, it's more you have to trick the devil into admitting that he's the devil.
There are some rules, because, for example, he's not able to take back Megan's powers.
Yeah, which he didn't even know.
Right. And so there is a rule. It's so because honestly, if he was able to take back his powers whenever he wanted, even for the people who were fighting against him, there has to be a way for them to keep their abilities. Otherwise, it's just like, no, that's mine too.
Yeah, it's just.
Now, it sounds like we're bashing the book, which I don't intend to.
It's still a good book.
It is the weakest of the three, in my opinion.
I thought it was a little bit jarring whenever David was kind of pulled into the alternate universe or reality or whatever it was, because that, I think, in a visual medium, that would have played out better because you would have had a more distinct separation of it. But inside the book, I would be like, so he's over here now. And it threw me off a little bit. Like it didn't, the transitions weren't strong enough or blatant enough, or I don't know. It didn't always flow as well as I wanted it to, but that's a hard thing to do though.
And part of it is it through him.
Well, yes. I mean, it
was jarring for him. And so, but no, I totally get what you're saying. It makes sense. The other thing is I felt like Obliteration was this. He was the Chekhov's gun that never fully got fired. It got cocked, but it was used, but not
how you expected.
In the way I would have. It didn't quite sit right. Yes, I understand. He teleports David to the space station, and he follows through on that. That's cool, but he felt.
Like it was almost like he'd been this big horrible threat, and now he's a tool to use compared to being a threat.
And he wasn't transitioned from one to the other properly. It's sort of the what's the trope name? Spikefication, villain decay.
Villain decay.
Oh, from Buffy.
Now, I do like the concept that. At the end of the book that he shows up and he's like, okay, cool. David's got a nemesis. This is great. But, it's like Steel Slayer has Obliteration as his nemesis. This is an interesting concept. Okay. But it just felt a little wobbly between amazing villain and then reluctant ally, and then it just didn't quite mesh as well as I think it could have.
It doesn't fit in comparison to all that great development we got at the Nighthawk Foundry, all the great character developments we got as they rode off to get to Ildithia, and including finding out Megan was a family of crazy preppers.
Yeah,
and that's why she's so good with a gun.
Which makes sense.
Okay, I'm going to say something. I don't mean it quite as extreme as this instance, but it felt kind of like the end of Mass Effect 3.
Oh.
Where Mass Effect 3 was an amazing game. There's all this emotion, all this build-up, and then just...
Then you have
the ending is just like...
Well, did you pick... I want to know, did you pick lime, cherry, or blueberry ending flavors?
I think I got blueberry because, I
can't remember what the colors were, but I picked...
I don't remember either.
Don't kill people.
Yeah.
It was hard.
And there may have been some minor spoilers in what we just talked about. It's a 10-year-old game at this point.
If you don't know by this point, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. There's internet videos out there to tell you why everyone was pissed. When you have a 99% awesome game and then you fall on your face in the landing, it's a problem.
But here's the thing. The reason people were so mad about the ending of that game is because everything before that was so good. And that's kind of how I feel about Calamity. They're like the ending of Calamity. Everything else, everything leading up to it was actually really, really, really good.
It just
but
the ending feels
just
rushed.
Was suddenly like whoa. It just felt kind of rushed.
Yeah.
The other thing about it, and this is, I don't think his explanation of Prof makes any sense whatsoever.
That's the other thing that's.
I don't agree. It doesn't make sense.
I understand that Prof's fear is failure. That makes sense. I don't understand why Prof's powers work against him. And he doesn't heal from his powers being used against him. So.
Because, yeah, Tia says she accidentally lanced him with one of his spears, and it healed back as normal. When we bring Tiva into the middle of it, which, by the way...
it didn't heal back.
That's why he wouldn't lend out those powers, from what I remember. And it freaked him out is because when his own power got bounced back at him, it did hurt him.
It did hurt him.
But why?
Because that's the weird thing.
That doesn't 100%.
It doesn't fit.
That doesn't feel like failure.
The other thing, and this just bugs me from a narrative sense, where they're like, what's he afraid of? Oh, he's afraid of his own powers. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Literally everything you've talked about is what they feared before they got their powers. The fear came first. They emphasize this over and over again. He can't be afraid of his powers before he knew he had powers. Like, that's not a thing.
I think it might be building off of his own abilities, because like he could have entered a contest or something, and he didn't want to risk failure, so he didn't fully put himself out there. It's kind of like cutting yourself off at the knees.
No.
So
like,
you
that
don't
part
fail.
makes sense. It doesn't make sense that Tia and Jonathan say, he fears his own powers.
Right.
Where like that's his fear, because it's a logical inconsistency, and these are the two smart characters on the team.
Basically, Tia should know better.
Yeah, both he and Jonathan, both of them. He can't be, because
I don't know that Jonathan didn't know.
Yeah,
because I feel like Jonathan.
Or I meant David. I said Jonathan. I meant David.
Okay, yeah, because I was like Jonathan.
He would know his own weakness, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that he knew, but unlike Megan, he didn't trust Tia with his real weakness. Megan trusted David with her actual weakness.
Well, and I think that's also part of the madness of it all. Is the whole idea is it pushes them to not say these things. Mm-hmm. And unlike Megan, who, because David is annoying and persistent and doesn't stop and doesn't give people enough space sometimes, he just sort of kept hammering at it, and then she sort of opened the door a little bit, and then he finally didn't push appropriately.
Yeah.
And so she opened up. Prof has always been very private, and Tia is also someone who respects people's boundaries. And so I think in this area, they didn't push their relationship to a spot where he would sort of be forced to tell her, this is what it is. And he sort of lets her come to the incorrect conclusion, the incomplete conclusion. And we see David doing the same thing, where he's like, should I tell people what I know about myself and my thing with Calamity? And he keeps justifying why he doesn't need to tell people about his thing with Calamity. And I think probably the same thing happened with Prof, just over a longer period of time. Because the real secret is the power of love, as we went through last time.
Making Megan sick.
But no, I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy the book. I do think this is one of the weaker things that Brandon has written, because of these things that just, I don't think they fit, and I think it needed a little more time to breathe. And I don't necessarily even blame him for that. I'm willing to bet his publishers, because this isn't his normal publishers when he goes through YA. I bet they're just like, no, this is the limit. It's YA. We don't go over this. And then I can imagine Brandon just being like, but you could go over it.
Yeah.
And I think he would have given a few of the scenes a little more room to breathe, where he could explore some things a little bit more. Because, the obliteration stuff, it feels abrupt. He just sort of appears at the party.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know that they don't want to keep super long epilogues, but I wanted to see more. It was so cute.
Yeah. It was an interesting concept of, in this other reality, that
David's dad.
His dad is Steelheart.
And accidentally killed him.
and he wears the Superman logo.
And he's wearing like sweatpants or something like that. He's not wearing super nice, like tight-fitting, muscly clothes. He's just kind of wearing stuff.
Well, he's wearing the Steelheart outfit. Thought he said, isn't he?
Because I thought it was just black T-shirt and slacks, but
yeah, but he still had like the cape.
And
I don't know. That's how I read it too. But maybe I'm
no, I like it's the right colors, but
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he's not going around like Fat Thor in Infinity
No,
War.
I wasn't thinking that, but just like he wasn't wearing as polished of stuff is what it sounded like to me. But maybe I just was reading it. I don't know. That's what I remember. And I did think it was interesting that Prof and Tia had a daughter in that one too. Yeah. Tavi. Which, that's got to traumatize that poor girl that she probably didn't get to meet Toph, I'm guessing, or Prof. I'm guessing that Prof died.
She probably didn't meet Toph either.
Probably not Toph either, no. Sorry.
The other thing that's interesting about this other reality is in the other reality, David died.
Yeah.
Yeah. His dad killed him somehow.
And so this reunion is doubly special. It's not just like they're both getting something kind of special because the person that they loved who was killed at the very beginning of this whole thing
is back.
The person that they loved who was killed by Steelheart. Because wasn't David killed by his father at the beginning?
Yes, that's why he's like, oh, it's you, and he's like, and like they hug, and his dad is apologizing.
But that's the thing is they were both killed by Steelheart.
Yep, just changes who Steelheart is though, depending on where they were. So,
I don't know. With that, my favorite thing about that is just the fact that because he's clearly wearing the Superman S on the front of his shirt, and I just love the idea that in that reality, there's like DC Comics is like you can't do, like that's trademarked, and it's just like.
Really?
You gonna stop her?
Stop me.
This is pretty good advertising, don't you think?
Yeah, well, because remember, with the Capitulation Act,
they just are like...
Epics can do what they want.
Yeah. They are outside the law.
There's some epic who's like went to some poor starving artist like, we need you to design a thing. Oh, okay, sure, it does it. And then they don't pay them.
You knew this was coming.
And they're like, don't worry, we're paying you in exposure. They are evil.
Oh, man.
Oh.
So, overall, what did y'all think of the book and of the series as a whole?
I really like this world. I'm a sucker for it. Yeah, obviously, it's superhero power stuff. I love that.
Oh yeah,
crap.
As soon as I read it, I was like, okay, Jordan, here's one.
Yeah, I love that this is one of these things that's like, I love that Brandon doesn't just pigeonhole himself into the fantasy genre, and he branches out. At the same time, I do feel the series got weaker as it went on. I think it's an example of something where the first story was very tight, very well self-contained, but like a lot of concepts, the more you explore it, the more like you start to see the seams of the story narratively. And the one I compare it the most to is, ironically, Heroes. Season 1 of Heroes absolutely nails as far as the narrative, what they're going for. But by the end of the thing of season 1, the guy, the main characters basically got everyone's powers, and it's like, all right, where do we go narratively from here? And where they decided to go narratively, it's just sort of like,
medieval Japan.
This isn't as strong as that first season because of how tightly contained that story was. Now,
they undid people's character development too.
Yeah, and so now, luckily, this is a Brandon story, so we don't have to worry about character development going to the side. Yeah. Brandon does very well with these things, and it's nowhere near as bad as Heroes as far as how much it decays. Like it's sort of like what I said way back in our Elantris episode. It's it's like, as much as I say I'm not a huge fan of this book, it's still a Brandon book. It's still better written than almost anything else you're going to find out there. It's just, in comparison to the other Heights, it just isn't as good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so please don't take this as we hate this book, because we
don't.
clearly don't. I mean,
We
we've
really
got
like
a
this
lot of stuff to say about this book, and a lot of it is positive.
Well, and you know what? Save for the actual hit on Steelheart himself, which I think is the high point of this book. You know, some of the actual
On Steelheart?
when in the first book where they actually take
high
on
point of
Steel.
the first book.
Yeah. Save for that, I think the fight at Sharp Tower and the fight in the caves are really, really well written fight scenes. Just 'cause there's a lot of twists and turns within it that I just think work better in a fight scene than the fight scenes in Firefight did.
Well, and the Prof is an Limelight specifically is an excellent villain. His origin works. His background, his personality works. It just ends so abruptly, and that I think is what sort of messes up the rest of the book.
I think if we had been able to be in Prof's head that would have helped the flow, but since it's first person in David's head, we don't get that. So we don't get to see the transition or the snap or whatever it is when Larsener / Calamity, whatever, isn't affecting him anymore. And then he can actually not have all of the hangry, evil, whatever in his head.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is once that happened, like I said, it was just gone. And then he's on the space station. And then Prof and Megan are there. And then they're falling. And then they're in
it's
a
just like boom,
dimension.
boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
It's just like... Oh,
what?
It's just not as well crafted of an avalanche. Which is again, Brandon's allowed that. He's had so many phenomenal avalanches that can absolutely be forgiven. It's just that's why one of the reasons that I have trouble is
it just feels a little rushed.
Yeah, it's a little rushed.
I know Brandon can do better. Because I've seen better.
You're not mad. You're just disappointed.
Wow. No, I am not Brandon's disappointed father.
Oh, man.
No, but like this book has so much I do like in it. And I love the development of actually getting to see some of Megan's backstory.
Yes.
Where you start to understand why she's someone who has trust issues. And why she had to, and it's not anything personal. It's just she was raised in a paranoid family, and so
and we also get to see her opening up about that. It was good that she didn't open up about it that way in the second book because she's still closed off and she's still learning to open up. This is where we kind of see the fruits of everything. That happened in the second book of the trust that was built between her and David. She's actually willing to talk about it now.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I like exploring Mizzy and the fact that she still has all that rage and she doesn't hide from David when they're having the conversation about Prof that the conversation's really about Megan.
And it's like, why don't I get my revenge? You got yours, but why don't I get mine? Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very understandable feeling.
Then the interesting thing is Brandon, he said a while back, now it's not the case with Lux, but Brandon wanted to expand in the Steelheart universe, and he talked about some stories about Mizzy. Which I don't know if he's put those off the table. And as we've seen with Lux, he's starting to open up working with other authors, giving them collaborating rather than focusing on them himself. So maybe that'll happen as well, because it would be interesting. We don't know what Mizzy's powers are, do we?
We don't. Just that she has them at the very end. And I'm like, but I need to know what it is.
That's okay. I complained to Bill about this. My number one frustration in all these books is when they just start naming off epics. And it's just like, it's like, Fuego, go over here. And it's like, Fuego could mean fire or force, and I need to know.
You're like, I want a compendium in the back where it says this This
That's what I
epic
want.
has this
It's
power.
literally
and this
what
epic
I
has
want.
this power.
And that's the funny thing is that with the Reckoners board game, one of the things they got was a catalog of various epics that Brandon wrote.
Oh,
for
really?
them.
And it's
I
none
There's
of
several
these.
epics, but none of these
no.
are in it.
It's completely different. No, so maybe I'm spoiled by My Hero Academia because every time they a new character shows up with a new power, it does a quick, Smash Brothers character introduction screen, and it says what their power is, and not an explanation of the power sometimes, but it's just, like, okay, I have some idea of what's going on here. But because I don't get to see who these characters are, I don't get that itch that I need to scratch, which is, like, I would be David Charleston in this universe, obsessed with everyone's powers and trying to
absolutely.
catalog it.
Yeah.
But man, Brandon just absolutely sits here and just teases me the entire book. And it's like, here's another one. Here's another one. I bet they have some completely cool, weird power like some of these other ones, but you'll never find out.
Jordan's epic name would actually be taken from one of the former Reckoners, XL.
Oh, no, my name, my character name would be Nitpick, and it would just be going through trying to figure out what's wrong with everyone's powers.
Oh, boy. Oh, man. Oh, good times. We do love hearing from our listeners, so keep on sending in your questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere or other non-Cosmere books that Brandon's done. You can drop us your ideas for topics that you'd like us to discuss during the show. You can send us your theories or your thoughts on whatever books we're discussing, will be discussing. We would love to hear from you. And while you're at it, we'd love to hear your feedback on how you think we're doing, as well as any interesting theories that you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. Any of that you can send in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we could hopefully read that as part of the show. We read everything no matter what, but hopefully if it works, we can make it a part of the show as well. We also have a P.O. Box. That's the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. Outside of the podcast, we do have our own personal projects. Amy, why don't you start us off and let us know what you're doing and where we can find you?
So my Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my two websites, one which is sad still, is www.coincidencecosplay.com, and my Etsy is etsy.com/shop/coincidencecosplay for all your plush dice and one mist cloak needs. So, so FanX is this coming weekend, so that's what I'm doing. But I'm going to be my Twi'lek Smuggler on Thursday. I'm probably going to be Vin on Friday, because that's when I'm probably going to go to one of Sanderson's panels, and I'm going to try and hopefully get a picture with him. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, you'll be able to.
And then Saturday, I'm going to be my Loki in the coveralls, my Loki variant.
Nice.
So, yep.
Nice,
That's what I'm doing.
All right, Jordan, how about you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/splicestream. We actually are going to be switching up my schedule a little bit. I've been advertising Raid Boss Tower on Tuesdays. It's actually now going to be on Thursdays from here on out. Had a discussion with a lot of our community. So, if you're someone who plays Super Smash Brothers and you've been like, man, I'd like to try out that Raid Boss Tower, but you listen to this podcast on Wednesdays, and then by the time Tuesdays rolled around, you've completely forgotten about it because it's been a full week. I got good news for you. Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And even if you're not interested in playing, if you even just show up and just lurk, it helps me out a big way just because of the way the Twitch algorithm or lack thereof works. And so we definitely encourage lurking. Lurking helps.
Good to know. As for myself, I have another podcast that I run with my friend Dylan, and we talk about board games, and it's glorious. It's called The Innkeeper's Table, and we have new episodes come out every Friday morning. Our most recent episode that just came out was about auction games, where there's like a bidding mechanic. And the next episode coming out is about a game called Nidavellir, which is from Norse mythology. It refers to the land where the home of the dwarves. and you're going around and trying to recruit dwarves to your army to fight the dragon Fafnir. But it's basically an auction game.
Do you ever get to toss them?
No, no one tosses a dwarf.
Oh,
It makes me think of the French children meme. Anyway, continue.
I'm sorry, what?
So I'll let Bill finish, and then I will explain the French children meme.
Okay. In addition to the podcast, I do have some board game reviews over at www.innkeeperstable.com, and I occasionally post about games on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeepers Table, as well as at Innkeepers Table Podcast. Okay, Amy, you got to tell us now.
Okay, so apparently there were some French schools where children were running late, so their parents would throw the kids over the fence to get them into the school faster. And there was some notice on the wall or whatever that's like, do not throw your children over the wall. So then people would start taking pictures of like Aragorn and Gimli from Lord of the Rings, and and like, you must eat me, like, oh, but I won't tell anybody. Anyway, I'm messing up that part, but like they would put, like French parents and French children, and
oh gosh,
that's anyway,
awesome.
that was the whole thing, and
Okay.
it's hilarious.
For our listeners who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but you can't become patrons, we'd love it if you would just let your friends know about the show. And please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and to like and subscribe over at youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. And we would also love it if you would leave us a good review wherever you listen. That would be awesome. Okay, guys, final thoughts.
Superheroes are cool.
I actually want to know something from all three of us. Whose powers were your favorite?
Oh, gosh.
You can't ask that and expect a fast answer. That's
Sure I
hard.
can. My favorite was mitosis. Like, I loved the description of his powers and how bizarre they were, but how smartly he used them. Like, when he used all his... he formed his own radar network by making clones of himself. Like that, just like that is a really creative use of that. Plus, I've always dreamed about finally being able to be in two places at once and finally getting things done.
Yeah, but you get dumber as you split.
No, he didn't. That was David's notes.
That
were
was
wrong.
after his mega boost.
Yeah, well, I don't need to be in too many places at once. Mostly, I just need someone who can actually, do stuff physically while I can do stuff mentally, and then they can switch once they're burned out. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh man, because we didn't learn any lessons from Calvin and Hobbes about duplicating ourselves.
Oh no, none of that.
Oh man, I honestly don't know what my favorite.
I'm kind of
would
a
be.
toss up between like Steelheart, just because flying and being invincible would be really cool, and then loophole, right? Like, because it would be really nice to shrink stuff down and then move. Because like I always hate having to find like a parking spot in a hard place. It'd be nice to shrink down my car.
It would be to watch your kids if you could just shrink them down.
I know.
And put them in a shoebox.
This is why it's good that I don't have these kind of powers, because I would do bad things with them, and not like if I've always joked that if I could like put my children in like cryo sleep or something, I could get so much done, but then my children wouldn't like never age, because it would be bad. So
I feel like it's kind of cheating, but I would say probably Prof, just because the healing ability.
That would be nice too.
That's a personal reason though, but
yeah, but also think about just being able to get around traffic because you're just going around on a disc.
Outside of that though, possibly Nox. Just because I like that he can shapeshift, and shapeshifting has always been one of the cool powers to me.
That is a cool There's too many good options. That's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can only shapeshift into a pigeon and a dog, as far as we can tell.
That's all we've seen. That doesn't mean that's all they can do.
As far as I'm concerned, the canon is he can only shapeshift into common animals because he's a level 1 druid. And
just give him time.
I love this concept of sitting here. Regalia's like, look, I need you. Could you just give it to him? And Calamity's like, fine, I'll give him lame shapeshifting. And she's like, I'm sorry, is that a specific power? Yes, it is.
Special thanks to our patron producer, Mims Laundry Service. Not every hunter carries a spear. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for the show, email them to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. In our next episode, we are going to be discussing the newest book in the Reckoner series, Lux, which was actually co-written with another author whose name I cannot think of at the moment. But join us for the live recording where I will have that name actually on the tip of my tongue.
You are putting a lot of pressure on yourself at the beginning of the next episode.
On September 27th, 2021, at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, at www.twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember,
There's
There's always
another
another
secret.
secret.